Ramses, or the Rosy-Colored Resurrection, Part 3. Our entire linear and accumulative culture collapses if we cannot stockpile the past in plain view. To this end, the pharaohs must be brought out of their tomb, and the mummies out of their silence. To this end, they must be exhumed and given military honors. They are prey to both science and worms. Only absolute secrecy assured them this millennial power, the mastery over putrefaction that signified the mastery of the complete cycle of exchanges with death. We only know how to place our science in service of repairing the mummy, that is to say, restoring a visible order, whereas embalming was a mythical effort that strove to immortalize a hidden dimension. We require a visible past, a visible continuum, a visible myth of origin, which reassures us about our end, because finally we have never believed in them. Whence this historic scene of the reception of the mummy at the Orly airport. Why? Because Ramses was a great despotic and military figure, certainly, but mostly because our culture dreams, behind this defunct power that it tries to annex, of an order that would have had nothing to do with it, and it dreams of it because it exterminated it by exhuming it as its own past. We are fascinated by Ramses as Renaissance Christians were by the American Indians, those human beings who had never known the word of Christ. Thus, at the beginning of colonization, there was a moment of stupor and bewilderment before the very possibility of escaping the universal law of the gospel. There were two possible responses: either admit that this law was not universal, or exterminate the Indians to efface the evidence. In general, one contented oneself with converting them, or even simply discovering them, which would suffice to slowly exterminate them. Thus, it would have been enough to exhume Ramses to ensure his extermination by museumification. Because mummies don't rot from worms, they die from being transplanted from a slow order of the symbolic, master over putrefaction and death, to an order of history, science, and museums, our order, which no longer masters anything, which only knows how to condemn what preceded it to decay and death, and subsequently to try to revive it with science. Irreparable violence toward all secrets, the violence of a civilization without secrets, hatred of a whole civilization for its own foundation, and just as with ethnology, which plays at extricating itself from its object to better secure itself in its pure form, demuseumification is nothing but another spiral in artificiality. Witness the cloister of Saint-Michel de Cuxa, which one will repatriate at great cost from the cloisters in New York to reinstall it in its original site, and everyone is supposed to applaud this restitution, as they did the experimental campaign to take back the sidewalks on the Champs Elysees. Well, if the exportation of the cornices was in effect an arbitrary act, if the cloisters in New York are an artificial mosaic of all cultures, following a logic of the capitalist centralization of value, their reimportation to the original site is even more artificial. It is a total simulacrum that links up with reality through a complete circumvolution. The cloister should have stayed in New York in its simulated environment, which at least fooled no one. Repatriating it is nothing but a supplementary subterfuge, acting as if nothing had happened and indulging in retrospective hallucination. In the same way, Americans flatter themselves for having brought the population of Indians back to pre-conquest levels. One effaces everything and starts over. They even flatter themselves for doing better, for exceeding the original number. This is presented as proof of the superiority of civilization. It will produce more Indians than they themselves were able to do. With sinister derision, this overproduction is again a means of destroying them. For Indian culture, like all tribal culture, rests on the limitation of the group and the refusal of any unlimited increase, as can be seen in Ishi's case. In this way, their demographic promotion is just another step toward symbolic extermination. Everywhere we live in a universe strangely similar to the original, things are doubled by their own scenario. But this doubling does not signify, as it did traditionally, the imminence of their death. They are already purged of their death, and better than when they were alive, more cheerful, more authentic in the light of their model, like the faces in funeral homes.